Joining me now, first-class father, Clay Travis. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Hey, I appreciate that. I hope I'm first class, maybe second class, maybe carriage class. I don't know. You'd have to ask my boys, but I appreciate being on with you.
Yeah, well, you're on the show. You made it. You got the title for now. So for the next 15 minutes, that's what we're going to call you. If you could, let's start right here. How many kids do you have and how old are they?
3 boys. I have a 15-year-old, a 12-year-old, and an 8-year-old. So they are the most important things in my life, and they've been a lot of fun. They're at great ages right now. I'd be very comfortable for the last 4 or 5 years. I've said this, just kind of hanging out here for longer because they're old enough that you can do a lot of fun things with them, but not so old that they think being around dad or mom is super uncool. So they're kind of perfect ages. It's been a lot of fun. And the only thing I wish I'd had more, but I'm pretty happy with 3.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. Our oldest will be a senior in high school starting in September. We have 3 boys, then got our girl on the 4th try. So we were able to squeak her out there at the end. If not,
I would have liked to have had a daughter just to see what it's like. But I may have to wait for granddaughters at this point. So
well, if you could, Clay, for the people who don't know, just take 1 second to hit them with a little bit about your background and what you do.
Yeah, so look, I took over for legendary Rush Limbaugh. I'm on a show called Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show every day from 12 to 3. I run and sort of manage OutKick.com, which is one of the biggest sports websites in the country. I was on a sports gambling TV show for 4 years. I've worked with Fox Sports quite a lot, college football, and many other different topics there over the years. And I'm about to publish my 4th book, which will be out in August. So I do a little bit of everything, but radio, TV, and writing is sort of my province.
Wow, so cool. But obviously more important than that here is the fatherhood journey. So take me back 15 years ago. How old were you when you became a dad, and how did that experience kind of shift your perspective on life?
I was 28 years old when my oldest was born. So I think relatively young, in the grand scheme of things, especially for dads. I would say I'm way better of a dad now after after having gone through 3. And in particular, I would say the thing that's changed is before you have kids, you think you're busy, right? And there's people out there watching right now who don't have kids yet. But one of the things that I have had to learn is the balance of work, your priorities, your life in a way that I never quite frankly really comprehended before I had kids, what time vacuums these kids are. And I always tell the 20-somethings out there running around who are super young that you interact with on a day-to-day basis. They don't have kids yet. They think, I'm so busy. I'm like, no, you're not. You could work 12 or 14 hours a day. You still have several hours where you have nobody that you're responsible for but yourself. Once you have kids, you're always busy. So I would say it just kind of changed the way that my day-to-day was created, but also made my horizon a lot different because I spend a huge part of my time, as I'm sure you do as well, thinking about the world that my kids are going to inherit long after I'm gone. I'm 44, and I try to see the world through my kids' eyes more and think about what we're leaving behind more so than just focusing on myself, if that makes sense.
It does, Clay. And obviously, yeah, I that is a big concern of mine. And just like you said, to the young 20-year-olds, our society has kind of scared the younger generation into starting a family, getting married. The nuclear family has been under attack in this country. I think parents are the underdog, particularly the family man. He is looked down upon. He's become the villain in our society today. And we've got a number of kids growing up without a father or a father figure in their life. And I think that is the top priority or the number one cause. That plus God being removed from society, those 2 things have been the 1-2 punch that have really knocked out our society here today.
Yeah, I think there's a huge legitimacy to the idea that masculinity is under assault. And, I think about it a lot as the father of 3 boys. Being a man is an important and good thing. I don't believe in the idea of toxic masculinity any more than I believe in the idea of toxic femininity. I think there are good dads, bad dads, just like there are good moms and bad moms. And what I want to create now with my boys is I had a fabulous dad. I think my dad, if you put him on the scale, is in the 99.9 percentile for dads. I was incredibly fortunate. And I bet like a lot of other dads out there, you either use your dad as a model for what you would like to become, or if you feel like you didn't have a great father relationship or a great father figure, you try to use what your life was like as an example of what you don't want to create going forward. And I feel fortunate because in many ways, I'm trying to emulate the upbringing that I had from my own father, who I think did an absolutely incredible job. I don't think I'm as good of a dad as my dad was. I think he was better able to focus. I think he was more patient with us than I am. But I feel fortunate that my kids get to have him as a grandfather too. So my hope is that the combo of me plus him as the grandfather is going to end up giving them a little bit better of even an experience and opportunity that I had with fatherhood.
Yeah, awesome. And I think you're right. Now, I've interviewed a number of dads that grew up without a father or an abusive father, and they were able to break that cycle and say, I want to give my kids what I didn't have growing up.
Correct.
And those are the real blessings to our society when people are able to make that shift, because so many are unable to do it, and they fall into the same cycle, repeat the same habits, abandon their kids, and it leaves our communities devastated here. And one thing, too, because I know obviously you've been covering sports your whole life, we've seen more of a blend now with sports and politics, I think, than we've ever seen before. And it only seems to be represented on the one side. I know we had all these leagues were encouraging their fans to donate to Black Lives Matter, which has now turned out to be a complete fraudulent front that went bankrupt. And we've never heard an apology from any of these leagues saying, hey, we got that one wrong. And now what we're going to see here on Friday is these sisters of perpetual indecency are going to show up, and they're going to be honored with a community hero award. And you got parents that bring their kids to the games. And this is a group that totally mocks the Catholic Church, and they're celebrating it. It really honestly makes me sick as a father and sick as a Catholic and sick as an American. Yeah,
look, I mean, some people ask that question. I was just a regular sports guy, right? I'm going to sit around and tell you who I think is going to win the Super Bowl. I'm going to tell you, who's going to win the World Series. Let's talk about who the best basketball player is in the world. And sports became so infected with the woke virus that they almost became totally and completely intertwined. So people say, well, how did you move from sports to politics? See, I didn't. Sports became so political that you either had to make a choice to pretend it wasn't, right? Because there's some people out there who say, I don't know why you have to have an opinion on the Dodger Pride Night. I don't know why you have to have an opinion on Colin Kaepernick not standing for the national anthem or putting Black Lives Matter on the basketball court. And my argument is, well, if you want me to pretend that I'm blind and that I don't have an opinion on that, I can. But when you're trying to destroy American institutions and attack them with everything you've got, and meanwhile, you're bowing to to China, I think it becomes so intertwined that it's impossible not to call out that hypocrisy.
Yeah, and one of the wildest things, especially during the pandemic, was the player on the Brooklyn Nets that wouldn't wear the mask. I forget his name now.
Kyrie Irving.
Kyrie Irving. The whole idea, he wouldn't get vaccinated. And the whole idea that if he had gotten traded to another team, he would have been allowed to play in the same arena. And people were buying it. And like, if you talked about it, they're like, oh, it's not a big deal.
He
but it
could
made
go
no
and
sense.
sit in the crowd and watch the games in Brooklyn, but he wasn't allowed to play in the games. It's just absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it made you want to bang your head against the wall and think, am I the one that's crazy here? Like, it really drove me nuts during that. But getting back to you as a father here, what would you consider to be the top values you want to instill in all three of your boys growing up?
I think number one is work hard at something. I don't care what it is, right? If you decide that you want to be a history teacher, then I want you to be the best history teacher in America, right? If you decide that you want to be a entrepreneur, whatever it might be, I think trying to reward effort over results is what I spend a lot of time in. I think sports is important, right? Because this is how you kind of learn the idea. Most people are not going to be the best athlete on their team. At some point, you're not going to be, right? That doesn't mean that you can't commit entirely to working hard and trying to get the most out of your pursuit of excellence. And so I think that idea of working hard and pursuing excellence in whatever craft or field you embrace is the one that I spend the most time, effort over results. Because if you work hard for long enough, it's been my experience that you will see really good results. But trying to reward just talent I think sometimes we focus on what people are good at as opposed to the work ethic that's behind it.
I think part of the problem with that too, Clay, is that you're rewarding mediocrity today too. So many kids show up, don't put the effort in, and they're still getting the award. And that's not doing them any justice, because that's not making them want to go back, get better, because they didn't get the award. So I think that every kid gets a trophy type of philosophy has really crippled so much of the youth, especially in this country today.
Yeah, and I think you have to be mentally tough. I think that ties in. Like, losing is not a bad thing. To me, if you only win or only succeed, it probably means you aren't attempting to stretch your boundaries and achieve new talents and new challenges. And so that's a big part of that too. You have to learn how to fail and still get yourself back up and try again.
Yeah, well said. I know you said rewarding effort is one of the things. I love to ask the dads about discipline. I know you said you had a great dad growing up. What type of disciplinarian are you as a father with your three boys? And is that different than the discipline style you grew up with?
My dad, I would say, was very lenient. I was also an amazing child, so he didn't have to discipline me enough. My sister might disagree with that characterization. My wife is actually way tougher than I am. I am probably, if you were asking my wife, what is Clay's flaw as a dad, she would probably say that I tend to be pretty lenient in terms of enforcing sort of strict regulations. If I could go back in time and change one thing, some people out there are young parents. I wish I had thought more about the integration of technology, iPads. We've held off on getting phones for our kids till they're 14 or 15. I think that's kind of good. But I didn't really spend a lot of time because, so my kids, like I said, are 15, 12, and 8. It was like all of a sudden the iPad existed, the iPhone existed right as they were kind of coming of age. And nowadays, I think maybe parents think more about how they integrate technology as a part of their parenting. We were just kind of in the weeds. We were kind of in the frenzy. I didn't ever make like a conscious decision of, I'm not going to let my kid use an iPad until they're X age. We did with the phones, but that's one of the things that if I go back and look at, I hope that we haven't introduced technology to them in a way that has changed sort of their developmental space than it might have otherwise. You sit back, I think if you're not questioning your choices that you're making as a parent on a regular basis, you're probably not doing the best version of parenting that you could. So that's one. If you got a 2-year-old or you got a pregnant wife right now, I still believe, by the way, that women get pregnant, men can't. So that's a wild, controversial opinion, evidently. So you got a pregnant wife right now, or you're a woman watching this with your husband or whatever. That's one of the things that I'd be more contemplative of, I think.
Yeah, you get me banned on YouTube for saying things like that. But one of the things that concerns me about the technology, I'd love to get your take on this because you covered the sports gambling for quite a while. I grew up, unfortunately, I fell into all these. I'm a recovering alcoholic, addict, gambler, maniac, the whole thing. I was, booking bets by 8th grade and booked them all through high school. And I was a sicko with it. And now you have the opportunity I could go to the local racetrack here and bet parlays, teasers, everything now is being encouraged. The sports leagues are now encouraging you to do it. And for these younger generation that have these tablets, it almost seems like the land of make-believe, and they're all doing these things now, and it's so easy for them. And I'm afraid that we're creating monsters, and we don't even see the results of it yet because it's so brand new. And these kids are playing poker online, they're playing all these things now, and they're doing it legally. What's your take on what this is doing to our society? Is it a good thing? I know it brings in a hell of a lot of revenue.
Well, first of all, if they're doing it under the age of 18 or 21, they're not doing it legally, right? So they may be cheating their way into be able to do it at a young age. Look, that ties into me with the value of understanding money. And I think that oftentimes our schools do a really poor job of sort of inculcating the idea of how to respect money, how to use it, why people use credit cards or spend money online when it's not physical in ways that they would not if it were physical. And so I think understanding, to me, sports gambling is entertainment, right? I like to go to the movies. I like to go golf. I'm spending money to be entertained. So I think so long as the money that you are spending is in your head understood as a entertainment, like you can watch a game and you might win 50 or $100 while you watch that game. Okay, if I go golf, I'm probably going to spend 50 or $100 pretty easily, and I don't get that money back, right? Presume that it's a cost of entertainment. I think understanding, hey, what an investment is and what an entertainment is. And the distinction between the two is complicated. What I worry about is when people conflate that and decide, oh, this gambling thing is investing, like I'm trying to make money, in the same way that if you're on Robinhood and you're trading stocks 45 times a day, I'm nervous about that versus, for instance, buying S&P 500 index funds, putting that money off on the side and saying, I'm not going to worry about it too much on a day-to-day basis. So I think it's all part and parcel to me of trying to make kids understand what money is, how to allocate it, and to make responsible, reasonable decisions as it pertains to what you do with that money.
Yeah, very well said, Clay. Yeah, and I hard lessons are learned, definitely. I figured out that I scream just as loud at a horse race when I got 100 as when I do have $1 on it. I just want to win. I want to cash the ticket. That's really what it comes down to.
Out of the Little League game for cursing. I'm far from perfect, right? Like awful ball I caught from an umpire naturally react. And people say, oh, yeah, I can't believe you cursed it again. I was like, if you, like, again, I'm far from perfect. If you sit in the Travis household on a Saturday or Sunday and there's college football or NFL games going on all day, the boys have heard a few choice words over the outcomes of games. I wish I didn't, but that is certainly a flaw.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Father's Day is this weekend. So what does the perfect Father's Day look like for you?
The perfect Father's Day for me. So I will actually be this year up at Cooperstown, New York. I'm going to be at a 12-year-old Little League. I'm sure there's a lot of dads who've been to this. It's 12U. I'm going to be up there with my 12-year-old watching games all day. It's kind of a perfect day. I would say a perfect Father's Day is get to go out, whatever restaurant is your choice, get to kick back, watch U.S. Open is always going on that weekend, and then your wife sleeps with you to close out the night. That to me is perfect Father's Day.
That sounds like a banger. All right, last thing I want to hit you with here, Clay. I love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for that brand new dad out there or that about to be father who's listening?
I think the biggest challenge of any new baby is lack of sleep. And I think to the extent that you can do anything to help your wife or your significant other to get as much rest as she can and as much rest for you as you can, it is like being in boot camp. You have no idea how much difference going from, let's say you're getting 6 or 7 or 8 hours a night sleep to suddenly having 3 or 4 hours strung together. And if you can, and I know it's difficult, just be cognizant of everybody's temperature is going to be elevated. Everybody is going to be likely to anger more rapidly. And if you can just take a pause and avoid and try to be supportive, I promise you get through it. That baby sleeps through the night, the whole first night. It will become, you've had 4, I've had 3. The first time that baby sleeps through the night, the whole night, first of all, you're concerned that something happened, right? You rush in, like, oh my goodness, is he or she still okay? It will become one of the greatest days in your life. Quick story. I remember for our first, the only way we could get him to sleep was in those little swings, right? Like we finally were just so fed up. We were like, we'll leave him in this swing and we would change the batteries on that swing. He would sleep 8 hours in the swing as long as it was moving. I don't know what it was about it for him, but in that swing, he would sleep 8 hours. You take him out, you put him in his crib, he'll sleep 2. And so this was my experiment. I was a little bit of a mad scientist. I said, look, he'll take a 2 or 3 hour nap in there. What if we just leave that thing going all night, see whether he'll stay in there? It worked. So try some experiments. I know for a lot of people, the babies, it's amazing how often they fall asleep in the car, right? The car seat, like you get them like kind of tucked in there. Every kid's different. Our first was a handful. Our second and third were cake. I think probably it has to do with the patience and what you learned. You're not as stressed as a parent. But I would say in those early days, when you're not getting sleep, when the stress is at a high level, if you can just do your best to just take a pause before you get into an argument, before you get in a fight, understand lack of sleep elevates everything to a crisis level. That's my best advice. If you can afford, some people, if you have family members who can sleep over, the night nurses, if you're fortunate enough to be able to occasionally have that, it's like the best Mother's Day present imaginable. And then the other thing is, I got a couple, you're on the hook for a lot of Mother's Day. I didn't realize this when I had kids. The kids, until they get old enough, they don't know that they're responsible for Mother's Day. you got to take care of your own mom and you got to take care of your wife. Even though she's not your mom, you're on the hook till those kids get old enough to take that off your plate. That's a lot of years. Don't blow it.
Yeah, you're right about that, man. I love the message. This has been an honor for me. I got to say, Clay Travis, you are a first-class father all the way. And thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time on First Class Fatherhood.
Hey, I appreciate it. Keep up the good work, my man.